Welcome to Across Africa, France 24's weekly roundup from across the continent. Coming up this week, a state of emergency is called in Kaduna, northern Nigeria, over a tomato crisis that has seen supplies of the staple bottom out whilst prices rocket. A moth infestation is behind what's being called tomato Ebola. It's devastated crops. Also, we head to a techie throwdown in Senegal, where a robotics competition encouraged young engineers to flex their mechanical know-how in the hopes that they'll be back for more in the future. And there was a tasty lineup on offer as the UN's cultural wing, UNESCO, celebrated Africa Week here in Paris. Our very lucky Ben Barnier headed to the restaurant of a Franco-Ivorian chef who served up dishes that mixed the best of both. But we start with Zimbabwe, which, along with several other southern African countries, is going through one of its worst ever periods of drought. That's been caused by the weather phenomenon El Niño, and the UN's helping Harare to get to grips with the scope of its effects.
From stars to dust, these satellite pictures shot by the European Space Agency help the World Food Programme to monitor the devastating effects of dry weather caused by El Niño in southern African countries.
Sentinel-2 is a brand new satellite that provides very high resolution data with a very high frequency of observation. And what this does is to allow us to better estimate the impacts of El Niño on crop production, planted area, and the likely agricultural outcomes.
The region is going through one of its worst droughts in recorded history. Zimbabwe's president has declared a state of disaster in rural parts of the country. Livestock is dying, crops are wilting. The UN's food agency provides farmers with guidance and seeds that make a real difference.
Now that I apply the rule of conservation agriculture, my harvest is larger than it was before. Even a small farmer like me can save water and preserve his soil and get a better yield.
While the satellite pictures and modern seeds have improved the lives of some, more than a quarter of Zimbabwe's population is still in urgent need of food. According to the UN, the country still needs over 250 million euros in aid to overcome this crisis.
Now to a less severe food shortage, but one that's serious nonetheless. Kaduna in northern Nigeria has declared a state of emergency over a tomato crisis. The fruit is the country's leading staple food. Supplies have dropped sharply and prices rocketed as a moth infestation known as tomato Ebola decimates crops.
Making jollof rice, a beloved traditional dish in Nigeria, has suddenly become very expensive. Tomatoes, one of its main ingredients and a staple of Nigerian cuisine, are going for more than €1 each at local markets.
The north, they don't have much in the north, in the sense of the rain is too much. That was the causes of we don't have enough of tomatoes. That is the reason why it costs.
Customers are worried they won't be able to prepare their favourite meals. Even the price of imported puree has shot up.
It's very hard. It's very hard because of it's too expensive. We can't cope. If we want to buy tomatoes now for a pot of jollof rice, we just buy small to cook. It's not enough for us.
Mounting violence between herdsmen and farmers in Nigeria's central states and Boko Haram's insurgency in the north have hit crops hard. But the main culprit is the moth infestation in Kaduna state. Farmers have dubbed it tomato Ebola. Kaduna's government has sent a team to Kenya to find a remedy against the moth.
Well, now to South Africa, where we meet some of the elite team who dig deep in doing their jobs of saving lives. The Mines Rescue Services squad have a rigorous entry program, and only candidates with rock-solid discipline make the grade.
48. Okay, they still enough oxygen.
The miner lying down is only acting, but the stakes are real. These men are training to save lives. One of the recruits pulls out during the claustrophobia test, which involves crawling through a narrow pipe with 15 kilograms of breathing apparatus on his back. There's no room for failure. This trainee has lost his chance to join the elite unit of the South African Mines Rescue Services.
Day one, the physical day is the hardest, and then day number 2 on claustrophobic, we usually lose like 2 guys as well. So more or less a class from 12 members, if we pass 7 members, that's a good figure.
These underground firemen will have to rescue trapped miners or fight fires and must demonstrate fitness and team spirit. Once they have passed, each new member is co-opted by one of the dozens of rescue teams. The teams become like families, supporting each other in life-threatening situations.
Even if you do feel scared, you actually can't really show it, because you just need to sometimes pick up the chit-chatting with the guys, keep them through, let them be able to communicate with you, ask them their conditions, and just soldier on.
South Africa's economy has long been built on the dangerous industry of mining gold, coal and diamonds. But the number of mining deaths has declined since the early 90s, from several hundred a year to just 77 last year. Now, the rescue services are increasingly called to illegal operations in abandoned mines.
We are more active trying to rescue or recover illegal miners than what we are on our active mines. It is really a major, major problem. When we go in there, we normally find that conditions are extremely dangerous, and then it's very difficult to get the infrastructure in to recover these illegal miners.
Since its foundation almost a century ago, the organization has lost 37 men in the line of duty. But it's also brought back to surface thousands. The challenge is to bring them back alive from some of the deepest mines in the world.
Budding young engineers in Senegal are being encouraged to look towards science and technology for their future careers. As part of that, a robotics competition was held to try and get them to flex their mechanical know-how. Our correspondents went along to the techie throwdown.
Robots face off on the circuit. Participants are tense. The crowd is enthusiastic as the poker-faced jury watches on. The first Pan-African robotics competition, which pitted 15 schools against each other, already has all the makings of a great contest. The event is the result of a 4-day workshop in which over 200 young people took part, and from these kits, and with great patience, built their own machines.
It's the first time we were manipulating these kind of objects. That was already an interesting experience. We learned to build robots. We learned how to use the software to control the robots. I think what we learned will be very useful in future.
The students were also encouraged to focus on problems faced by the agricultural industry in Africa.
Our project is all about trying to solve the problems that persist between herders and farmers. For example, here if animals come close to the motion detector, the propeller will start turning and could automatically trigger an alarm.
For the US-trained Senegalese engineer behind the concept, the goal is to provide concrete solutions.
In African countries, the way they teach science and engineering is not contextual. So this program tried to make a change. So they will be able to now see how math, physics, chemistry can be used in something that's relevant to the sustainable development of the continent, in this case, agriculture.
The aim is also to attract young people towards the sciences. And given the success of this edition, the next event is already planned for next year.
The UN's cultural agency, UNESCO, has been celebrating Africa Week, and several special events were being served up here in Paris, including an African menu prepared by an Ivorian French chef. Loïc Dablé has his own restaurant, Café Dapper, here in the French capital. This week, he brought cassava, plantain and spices to the UNESCO table.
Spicing up UNESCO's restaurant in the heart of the French capital.
Moussa, give me some chicken, bro.
During the institution's African Week, the French Ivorian chef Loïc Dablé presents some of his tastiest recipes.
Here we cut very thin slices of cassava. We added sour cream. People are not used to eating cassava like this. They usually bake it or boil it. But here we decided to cook a gratin, which gives people an opportunity to discover cassava or even rediscover it.
Like most people in this business, Loïc Dablé began his career as a teen apprentice. He went to a cooking school in Paris before learning the ropes of gastronomy in luxurious hotels and restaurants of the capital.
I spent 2 years at the Auberge Bressane. We cooked traditional French dishes, but interesting ones with special sauces for game. But I wanted to use ingredients which resonate with my identity. As an African and a French man, I wanted to include plantain, cassava, yam, and sambala in my recipes.
Some of the clients come especially to try African food, and it's worth the trip.
Delicious.
Wonderful, delicious.
What else can we say? I've started with something that's called the féroce, which is it's ferocious, yes, and it's I think avocado, manioc, and they said morue, codfish. So I'm eating that now, and I think it'll be very good. It's already tasty.
Loïc Dablé thinks he is fortunate to be a guest chef at UNESCO. He hopes other African professionals will follow in his footsteps. Meanwhile, he intends to carry on putting his own spin on the dishes he discovered in his travels.
Tasty stuff. Well, that is, though, where we're going to have to leave it for Across Africa this week. Remember, you can, though, join me Monday to Friday for Eye on Africa for more news from across the continent. Thanks very much for tuning in, and please do so again if you can. Take care.